We are now in the 17th chapter of the Gita, and so far Arjuna has been educated in the various modes, the gunas of nature, which govern an average person's life activity. He has also been told how the mode of inertia, tamas, has to be surpassed by cultivating the mode of kinesis, rajas, and both to be overcome by cultivating the mode of equilibrium, which is the sattva. And that's not the end of things. The seeker has to go further after acquiring this mode of balance, harmony, and that is to go beyond the operations of the three gunas. Before that, while in the stage of being governed by the rule of sattva, he respects the institution of shastra, scripture, which represents the cream of wisdom of the leaders of the society, experience and intuitions received for the individual and the collective guidance. That is the Shastra. To follow implicitly the scripture is a characteristic of the sattvic person. Arjuna proceeds to ask a very intriguing question at this stage. He says, supposing a person does not consult or obey the instructions of a Shastra, he does not care for the gradations of the gunas, but does what he wants to do, irrespective of what the social conventions prescribe, what the Shastra calls for. He feels inspired and he goes on to work. Where does he stand? What is the mood? What is the guna that governs him? The reply is, such a person is governed by an inner faith. Faith, Shraddha, as the Gita describes it, is different from what passes for faith in common parlance. It is not a conventional belief, not a religious conviction, not something, a conclusion arrived at by reasoning, but something deeper. It is a direct perception by the individual of a truth, and his perception is so evident, so clear, that he pursues to render it in his life with the utmost zeal, dynamism. He will not take a no because he is convinced that that's the truth of his life. And to justify his life, he has to work according to the truth of his perception. Now this acceptance of a truth of perception, a compulsive turn of nature to carry it out in practice in life, unaffected by any doubts, contradictions of logic. This is faith. And this faith, the Gita points out, comes from the inner Purusha, the being, the soul, which is embodied in oneself. It is from that base that this perception issues. And it is unaffected by any contradiction at any level of the being. You would remember Sri Aurobindo's definition of faith. Faith, he says, is a glimpse of a truth in the soul, which is reflected in the mind or the heart. But it is perceived and glimpsed in the soul. It is not of mental origin. Its origins are deeper. That is why it has a ring of authenticity about it. It will not be denied. And this faith, coming as it does from a deeper source of being, reflects the will of the soul, the will of the Purusha. And when that is the will, that is the central faith. One does not care for what the Shastra says, or what the convention says, or what the populace says. Now, the person who carries out such assignments described by Arjuna, that who doesn't consult Shastras, who goes beyond the Shastras, and he does what he wants, he is inspired by such a faith. The faith is man himself. Whatever faith, that is you. Centrally, it is that. What governs your life is your faith. The faith that this is the truth of my life. And that faith gives the strength and the power to render it in terms of life. This concept of faith being the bedrock of one's personality, of one's life's mission, is a central truth of spiritual experience and guidance. Speaking further, Lord Krishna points out that in life, whatever field, there are three elements. They are activity, austerity, tapas, and self-giving. I'm sorry, it is not activity, it is sacrifice. Austerity. Ascesis or tapas, sacrifice, and self-giving. In Sanskrit, they are tapas, yajna, and dana. These are the three ingredients of life movement. And all these three main ingredients are each of three types. He illustrates how the gunas, the three gunas, the modalities, influence one's life at every stage. He refers to food, for instance. Even such a small matter as we think of food, there are three categories. There is a food which is tamasic food. It is always cold, mostly cold, heavy, rotten or half rotten. That always increases the element of inertia, clouds the intelligence. That is tamas, tamasic food. Possibly, even the preserved foods today, which are so popular in the West, in tins you get them, they do come under the category of this tamasic food, because most of the nutritive value goes in the technique of sucking out the liquid portion and in adding chemicals to the preserved foods for sake of preservation. A good deal of harmful stuff is added, with the result that in America they were intrigued by the phenomenon of increase of cancer, stomach cancer, rectal cancer, and they researched into the phenomenon, collected statistics, and found that most of these cancers are caused by the popularity and growing use of preserved stuff, preserved meat, beef, chicken, whatever. They are preserved and they are found to cause this cancer. This has led, among other things, to the rise of the movement in America for natural foods. If you go around in some places, particularly in California or even in the mid region, you will find everywhere a lot of stress being given to nature foods. They are not preserved, which come direct from the farms. Even on the highways, you can find stalls where stuff, vegetable stuff, eggs and things come straight from the farm. And they are ready. People stop their cars and purchase them. In the shops, they wait till these shipments arrive. This has also spread to some countries in Germany, in Europe, but in India. We are taking special steps to produce preserved stuff. There are food specialities, things in Mysore, everywhere, where they are trying to preserve and sell in tins. A very retrograde step. It is justified on the grounds of convenience. I do not know. It is a question of priorities. Now this, so much about the tamasic food. Then there is the rajasic food, which some people like in the manner born. That is hot stuff, full of fire, giving excess of energy, pungent, acrid, even bitter. This is the kind of rajasic food which increases the element of passions, anger, desire, and other traits. And then there is the sattvic food, which is not too hot, not too cold, not too pungent, not too bland, but which has a certain balance about it, which is pleasing to the eye. A rajasic food is never pleasing to the eye, except to those who are greedy. But normally, the sattvic food is pleasing, and it has a very constructive result, effect on the body. One can't get greedy for sattvic food, but yes, for tamasic and the rajasic. So, the Gita gives us sufficient indications on the science of nutrition. How this science and knowledge of the modes, three modes, influencing our food should guide us in making the right choice. Then it speaks of sacrifice. Sacrifice also is of three types. The sacrifice that is done because it has to be done, without reference to the vidhi, the right way of doing it. In all these religious and spiritual matters, there is a mode, there is a process. But without reference to that, you just you go through it. Use any stuff you like. Not only the ingredients, but even the participants are hardly really have the right attitude. That is the tamasic sacrifice. Then there is the rajasic sacrifice, where the sacrifice is done, the tamasic sacrifice is done to the very lower elementals, not to the gods, not to the supreme, but to petty powers, to satisfy our desires and greeds, and that is tamasic sacrifice. The rajasic sacrifice is done usually to the lesser gods for satisfaction of one's desire, passions, ambition, and there is a lot of ostentation about it. One does this sacrifice for effect, image building, to impress people, to gain popularity, show, dramatic. The sattvic sacrifice is one which is done according to the scripture, according to the law, according to the requirement, using the right stuff in the right quantities, with the right attitude of offering oneself and the material offerings as symbolic of the inner offering, and not with a desire for fruit. The rajasic sacrifice is loaded with the desire for fruit, phala, but not the sattvic sacrifice. It is a flow of the soul to God. That is the sattvic sacrifice. No show, no ostentation, but correct, the right time, the right season, with the right people, with the right participants. These are the three types of sacrifice. Arjuna asks, well, some of these sacrifices are aimed to the gods, lesser gods. Not all can do it to the Supreme God. How about them? The Lord assures that the Supreme Godhead receives what you offer in the right spirit, even though you offer to the lesser gods. What matters is your approach, your spirit, your attitude. Even if it is offered to the smaller gods, the Supreme Godhead take cognizance of it. Then comes the tapasya. This also is of three kinds. There is an austerity, a tapas, which is done under mistaken belief, under wrong faith. You punish the body, you starve the body, you don't allow the body to sleep, you inflict torture on the body under the plea that you are going to purify the body, control the senses, and desiccate this flesh so that the soul may come forward. This kind of wrongly inspired austerity, discipline, tapas, is the lowest kind and a false kind. Lord Krishna makes a memorable statement that those who indulge in such austerities, they inflict wound on me, who am seated in home and home, in each house, in each body. It is an insult. It is a hurt. They hurt me, he says. They insult me. Avajanante mudha, who am in the heart of every creature. This is the lowest kind of austerity tapas. The rajasic tapas is imposing, well advertised, meant for obtaining high rewards. This is mostly done by the Asuric inspiration, where they do penances for extraordinary lengths. They go to extraordinary lengths, ultimately, for acquiring a very unspiritual hold on things, on men and matters. The sattvic tapas is the austerity, well balanced, respecting all the members of this of the being, consistent with the welfare of the generality, and it is a step leading to what is properly the ascesis, the concentration of energies at any level, without inflicting harm, without indulging in vital drama, but seeking enlightenment, focusing and release of constructive energies. That is the sattvic tapas. And then comes self-giving, dana. Any upward effort, any upward movement has to have as an essential feature giving up of oneself, giving what one has and is. Mostly in the society, general society, the giving is confined to material objects. Nobody does psychological self-giving. And this material giving is of the tamasic type when it is done what is called out of season. Whether the time is appropriate, occasion is suitable, nobody considers. Then question of patra, whether the person deserves to give. And with what motive do I give? To impress? To put the other person into obligation to me? Or as a return to what he has done to me? There is a calculated giving, which is the worst. And one doesn't care whether the recipient wants it or not. All is you want to put that fellow under obligation. And this kind of irrational, out of season, improper giving, charity, is the tamasic self-giving, dana. The second one is, as in other categories, imposing, to make an impression, to establish one's rule over others, giving with the motive of feeling philanthropic, feeling very great and patronizing. I am doing so much. The third one is giving with the consciousness that you are giving to God, that you are self-serving and giving to God in humanity, and you always have a regret that I can't do more, that you could not do more. And when you give, you do not give with any sense of claim. You have no claim on recognition or reciprocation by the other part. And as we have in the Indian tradition, they say the left hand should not know what the right hand is. That is, you forget about it. Once you give, once there is charity, you forget about it. You don't make a note of it. I am reminded in this instance how once there was a reference to somebody who had contributed considerable sum of money to the ashram. And he made no secret of it. He would always tell people, I have given so much, I have given so much. And indirectly he would also remind people who are going to Mother that he has done like this. So, referring to such cases, Mother once observed that for those who remember what they have given, for those who remember, the divine does not need to remember. Those who do not remember, the divine does remember. And this is a spiritual wisdom, that the value of what you give and what you do disappears once you use it for your egoistic self-affirmation. You give out of a spontaneous, generous impulse, because you want to give. You don't expect a return. This is what is the sattvic dhamma, approaching a spiritual concept of wholehearted self-giving. These faith, gunas, and work. Work is sacrifice. Every work done as an expression of self-giving, and a forging of link between yourself and your maker. They are the three themes in this chapter, and they have everyday relevance to all of us. We can never delude ourselves saying that they don't touch us. If we analyze ourselves closely, even if physically there are no stains, mentally, psychologically, there are some vestiges, even in the best of us. And spiritual purification demands that we take steps, we erase them out of our consciousness.